Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Very happy that you're able to join us today. This is the first of our virtual IDD workshops, although this month actually marks our one-year anniversary of this particular program, and we're very happy that you're able to join us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Suzanne Tomlinson, Director of Research Programs for the GCC. I'd like to briefly cover just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First of all, you may turn your video on or off, whatever you're comfortable with, but just know that we're recording the workshop like we do all of these, and you may end up in the recording if you choose to leave your video on. You should have received an agenda in an email this morning, but just to review, the format for today is basically going to be two 45-minute sessions of presentations, and each of those will have a 15-minute Q&A session at the end. To be respectful of everyone's time, we will strictly adhere to time limits. So in the event that we have to move to the next speaker before the previous one is finished, they'll be able to add their closing comments to the chat box. Again, the chat transcript will be made available on the website, so you can look for that on the IDDD website. The breakout sessions are going to address additional questions about the resources that are going to be discussed in the second session, and those will take place after the last Q&A. For those of you who signed up for those breakout sessions, you'll be added into the appropriate one and will be able to join those at once they're open at the end. If you did not sign up and you would like to join one, you can either email me or enter it into the chat, and if we see it, we'll try to get you added. In the main session, you will be muted. For those that are joining a breakout session, when you're in the breakout session, you will have the ability to unmute yourself. You can enter questions at any time during the chat, but we would ask that you begin the question with the name of the person to whom you're addressing, so we can identify it and give it to the right person to answer. You can also start it with just general to designate a general question that any of the speakers could answer. And again, speakers may respond to questions in the chat at any time in addition to those that are posed by the moderator during the Q&A sessions. And speaking of moderator, I'd like to introduce Stan Watowich. He's the chair of the GCC Innovative Drug Discovery and Development Consortium, and he'll be briefly introducing the speakers, keeping time and moderating the questions during the Q&A. So with that, Stan, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tomlinson, Suzanne. Delighted to be here. Thank you all for joining this workshop, virtual workshop. We're getting used to them. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in. The first speaker today, a 10-minute presentation, will be Shautong Song, leader of iCell Therapeutics.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to join the workshop and share my experience on the formation of a pharmaceutical staff as a faculty or PhD scientist in academia. So first, the life science company has a different categories, including pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, healthcare, health tech, consumer health, medical device, or even digital health and healthcare. So different types of life science company could need a different strategy and expertise. So my experience is only applied to pharmaceutical company. So the title for my talk is Should I Form a Pharmaceutical Startup? So here's my background and the company's history. I got my PhD and MD degree, and I started my postdoc research at UT Houston and Baylor College of Medicine from 2002 to 2007. And I was a faculty member from 2007 to 2016, from instructor to tenure track assistant professor at Baylor College of Medicine. At Baylor, my research was funded by R1 DOD grant and other about 10 grants. So in 2015, I raised money to start the company. So currently the company is funded by private funding, Texas, separate and IH, SBR grant. I raised about 4 million in 2016 to start the company. And we have two products, one product funded by separate last year and another product funded by IH SBR this year. The company was focused on vaccine and immunotherapy development for cancer and infectious disease. The leader product is at the R&D enabling stage. So our platform technology is a low immunogenic vaccine virus platform, and we have IP to protect the platform. So these slides show our pipeline. So first, we focus on the oncolytic virus therapy for cancers. The leader product, the first one, is target FAP for solid tumors, which is funded last year by separate grant. We are doing the CMC production, tox study, and R&D application. And the BCMA, this product target multiple myeloma, funded by RH SBR this year for a feasibility study. And recently we expand our research to infectious disease. So currently we focus on the COVID-19 vaccine and HIV vaccine. So this is our pipeline. Okay, so go back to the topic, how to start a startup. So before take the action, I think we should ask ourselves 3 questions. The first question is, has the technology been validated? The validation means a high impact publication, R1 grant, or some like a competition award. So to apply a grant or to be funded by VC or IH, I think the study, the project should be significant and innovative. In addition, we should look into the project is a platform technology or single product. A single product company is fine for a grant application like a SBR grant or separate grant, but a single product company will be very challenging to raise money from venture capital. So the second question is, we need some cash to start the business. Even like just register the company and tax return need some cash. So we need raise some angel money to start the company. Once we started the company, we can raise some money from venture capital, IHSBR, or the pharmaceutical strategic partnership. For the VC, I think for early stage startup company without a human data, it will be very challenging. Based on my knowledge, I think the chance could be very low, less than 1% or even 0.1% to raise the money, unless you have a very good reputation and a very strong network. So IHSBR will be the best option for the funding. And the fund success rate is about 20 to 40%. We will discuss a little bit more detail later. The third strategy is to secure a strategic partnership with a big pharma. We don't have the published the data for the success rate, but I think based on my experience, it could be very low without a human data. Unless you are you have a very good reputation and a very strong network. So as a junior scientist at a very early stage, I think IHSBR will be the best option. So the last question is, do you have a strong team and a necessary resource? When you apply grant or talk to VC, they want to see if you have a team and the resource to do the research. So I think the technology is a basis. If you have a good technology, you can attract the people. and it generated the network with the laboratory, the facility. In regards to the facility, I think we have two options. The first option is incubator, like JLabs, TMCX, provide a very good facility for startup company. But it's very competitive. Like the JLab, in the last several years, more than 3,000 companies inquire or apply to join the JLab, but JLab only accept more than 300 companies, so the acceptance rate is about 10%. Another option is to generate a connection, the collaboration with the institute, so you have access to the institution, their laboratory or their mouse study or CMC facility. So now we talk about the SBIR. SBIR grant include two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 is the feasibility study. Each year, so you could apply $300,000 each year, and after 2 years, so that's $600,000 for phase 1. And then for phase 2, you can apply 3 years, each year 1 million, so that's 2 to 3 million. And you can use the phase 1 to do the feasibility study, and phase 2 for the product development. And after that, you can apply the phase 2B or separate the phase 2 for CMC production, tox study, and even a phase 1. So basically, NIH grant, SBIR can support your start from the idea to the phase 1. So once you have the mouse study data and even the human study data, and I think the VC and big pharma will be very interested.
2 minutes.
Okay. So basically, these are last slides. So we'll see the funding rate. So here list from 2009 to 2018. So the last almost 10-year data. The success rate for phase 1 is about 15 to 20%, and the phase 2 is 30 to 40%. And the fast track is, I mean, like you directly apply phase 2. The regular phase 2 is a renew phase 1. So the direct phase 2, the fast track is a 20% funding rate. And every year, the NIH fund $2 billion for the small companies. But this year, it decreased to 1.2 billion, but it's still the best option, best resource for small company. So again, I think unless you have a very strong network or very good reputation, I think you need to think about you have very good technology. That's that's a basis for your company. And if your technology is very competitive, you will be able to get the money from SBIR, allow you to do other study. So that's my experience. So last slide has here is my email address. If you have any question, you can just email me. Thank you for your time. I will be happy to take any question later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to now turn it over to Brittany Barreto with Capital Factory. Brittany, welcome back.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Dr. Brittany Barreto, and I am so grateful to be asked to speak at this because I have been an attendee in the past. So it's always so exciting when you're an attendee and then later you are a speaker. So cool. So my background is I did my PhD in molecular and human genetics at Baylor College of Medicine. While finishing my PhD, I started my first startup called Faramore, which turned into the first nationwide DNA-based dating app. You can Google it. It's got a pretty good SEO. I did that for 3 years. In total, I fundraised $1.3 million for that. And unfortunately, last year, we were about to close our Series A, and Apple changed their policies around who can ask for DNA in the App Store. And we got kicked off the App Store because dating apps were not allowed to ask for your genome anymore. And my Series A fell through and I had 100K left in the bank, and I had to make a hard choice and close the company. And so I'm a real entrepreneur with a failure under my belt. And so after that, I got hired as Senior Venture Associate for Capital Factory. We are a late stage accelerator and venture fund focused on Texas. My job was to build their Houston branch. So I've been doing that for the past year, and now I am dabbling in Femtech. Femtech is technology that improves women's health and wellness. If you work on women's health and wellness, please contact me. I'm gonna put my LinkedIn and Twitter in the chat here. That's my trajectory. I wanna dig in a little bit now in terms of what did I do along the way. I'm very protocol oriented. So, sorry, I'm looking at questions. I will ignore them right now. I will tell you in a minute. So here are the steps that I took. 1, I started to go to events. I know you're tired. If you're a PhD student, or you are a postdoc, or you are MD, or you're an MD student, you are tired. I know it. But it is critical you push yourself to go to that after work networking event, because meeting people, even virtually right now, is absolutely critical to getting into this industry. And so I joined a club called Enventure. I will also write that name in the chat. Enventure is an amazing, amazing organization in Houston for you to start to get into this industry. I would go to networking events and I would meet somebody who looked like they knew everybody there. And I'd say, hey, can we get coffee sometime? I have questions. You don't actually have to have any questions yet. You just have to ask them to get coffee with you or to have a call with you. And so they 9 times out of 10 will say, sure, yeah, let's do it. And so then when you take this coffee or phone call with them, you just ask them about their experience. How did they, get to where they are now? What are they up to? Just ask them questions about themselves and start to build that network in that way. Next, we're on number 3 now, Adventure Coffee. Number 3 is internship. I did an internship with our next speaker. So cool. So Bala with Luminostics was at a startup career fair, and I walked up and I was like, I think I want to do startups. I don't really know. And he said, well, we have some things we need Googling, and we need somebody to critically think about the results and send us reports once a week. And I said, I could do that. And so for one summer, I was an intern for Bala, and you'll hear about his company next. And interning is an incredible way for you to test the waters. Every startup needs interns. I promise you, if you want an internship, reach out to me. I know I can find you a company that could use your help. Number 4, I went to Jack Gill's Life Science Entrepreneurship course at Rice University. I had never taken a business class before. This class was not only critical for me to learn some basic business fundamentals, but it grew my network, and I met Dr. Jack Gill, the teacher of that class. The following year, I was his teacher assistant, where he really got to know me and my work ethic. The following year, I started a company. I asked him for an investment, and he was my first investor. And so all of that was because I had built a relationship with him through that class. Number 5, I joined an accelerator. So Enventure also has an accelerator called Bioventures, and I went through that class. I learned what a pitch deck was. I learned how to do an elevator pitch. I learned about fundraising and IP. And so I do think accelerators are a great way for you to get your boots on the ground and start working on your company. And then number 6 is funding. For biotech companies, I highly, highly recommend getting that grant money like our last speaker was talking about, non-dilutive funding. That's fantastic. I was in a really unique position, and I don't have enough time to talk about my hypothesis as to why I was able to fundraise the way I was. But what I will say as a investor now, in today's day and age, investors are not going to give you money until you at least have a prototype and at least have some data that it might work. And so the best way to get to that point is through grants. The last few things I want to say is focusing on how do you get the IP from your school. So I went to BCM and I said, hey, I have an idea for a DNA-based dating app. I'm in the genetics department. do you own that? And they said, oh, we do not own that. And I said, okay, can you sign a paper saying you don't own it? And they signed it, and that was it. So BCM did not own my idea, even though I came up with it while there. Now I also am mentoring other startups that, you know, it's actually really great that their school is the one who filed the IP and owns it, and they're doing an exclusive license to the inventor. That's great because some patents are expensive, and you need some legal muscle behind it sometimes. And so you need to kind of debate which is the best for you. The last thing I'll say is that fundraising is an art. Starting a company is something very similar actually to a PhD program, where you have limited resources, you have limited time, you have unlimited stress, you have board meetings, AKA committee meetings. You have a pitch, which is similar to like a qualifying exam, right? So there's like a lot of similarities there, but nevertheless, scientists and doctors do need support in how do you start a startup. And so I do offer fundraising prep courses through myself, and I offer investor relations if you need help on figuring out the pitch deck and your pitch and meeting people. And so if you're interested in that, getting some more fundraising advice, I'd be happy to talk to you. I can't believe I fit all that into the 8 minutes. Apparently I didn't even get the 2-minute warning yet, but I could keep talking. Where did Stan go?
I'm following along with every word, and you still have 2 minutes and 31 seconds if you want to.
Great. I got it. I got more to say.
Yeah, trust me, I know you.
So, entrepreneurship is all about relationships. And so what I advise is, one, you be a good person. That sounds pretty basic, I know, but did you know how many times I was let into conferences because I simply showed up early and said, hey, can I help set up the chairs? How many times that I got an investment from someone because, you know, I was in Jack Gill's class and someone was handing out papers, and I said, hey, looks like you have a lot of papers in your hand. Do you need some help? And they said, oh, yes, I do. Here. People see that. Okay. And so by openly and very in public being a good person, like, people will see that. And when people invest in you, they are investing in your business. They're investing in your IP. They're investing in your market size, but they're investing in you as a human. Dr. Jack Gill, I don't know how many of y'all on here know him. He did not know anything about a DNA-based dating app. He didn't care to know about how the heck dating apps even work. What he did know was that Brittany is someone who does what she says she's going to do. She works hard. She works endlessly until the job is done. That is why he made an investment in me. He didn't need to know how many people are on dating apps and why. And so as you think about going on this journey, think about building relationships, being friends with people. Sometimes being an extrovert is not a scientist's forte. I know that. I'm the weird scientist who loves presenting. So I'm like the weird one here. But push yourself, just make friends. There's actually a ton of scientists in entrepreneurship that would love to be your friend and introduce you to other really interesting people. I am really, really bullish on more scientists becoming entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship is just science. It's, you have an idea, you do a pilot experiment or a pilot marketing ad, you collect the data, you analyze the data, you drop your ego, you say, wow, my idea totally sucked, or my idea was fantastic, we should put more money into this ad, or we're never gonna run that ad ever again. It's just like science. So if you're interested in this field, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat with you. Hi, Bala, one of my original mentors. I think my time, I rest my time to Bala. Up, Stan, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. How often does that happen? So anyways, we're going to go from one extrovert to another extrovert. We're going to turn it over now to Bala Raja, CEO of Luminostics, and let's hear about his journey. Bala, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Stan. I am happy to be here, and let me start with what I understand this meeting is, and Stan, maybe you can correct me if I go too off track in what I'm supposed to be helping with here. But what I was told is that this is a predominantly academic audience from around the Texas Medical Center and thereabouts, and 20 of people on the call have already formed companies to some extent, and the others are perhaps deciding whether or not they should start a company to commercialize their IP. Is that a fair summary?
It sounds like a fair summary, or at least the other individuals are giving it some thought, hopefully serious thought, but they would like to know how much fun it is from you, because you always seem to be enjoying yourself.
Right. Yeah, okay, great. No, that's good. So let me start then with a brief overview of my company and myself. My company is called Luminostics, luminostics.com. Check it out. We spun out of the University of Houston way back when in early 2014. And our company got its start with the Bio Ventures course. My co-founder Andrew and I had always wondered why most technologies developed at universities just gather dust on a patent office shelf, right, and never get commercialized. People just publish papers, they graduate and go work for large companies, and nothing ever gets translated. And so we always thought that the labs we decided to work in as PhD students, the choice was driven by the fact that the professor had started a company before, and that we were working on technologies that were translatable. So that's some preliminary background. So we started the company in mid-2014 when we were Andrew, my co-founder, and I were still PhD students. I was about to finish, and it has been a long journey with many twists and turns along the way. And what we do, by the way, is we have a platform for rapid infectious disease testing that uses a smartphone's camera for readout. So we have the IPs around these luminescent nanoparticles that can be quite sensitively detected by cheap optics, and that we can engineer to detect things. So between 2014 and today, over several twists and turns, we have raised about like $8 million in total capital. We're currently a team of 16 full-time people. We have experience both with the non-dilutive side. So about $2.5 million of that $8 million is from NIH, SBIR grants and contracts, and the rest is from a combination of venture capital and development deal with a large pharma company. And our current focus is completely on developing products for point of care and at-home COVID-19 testing. And if you Google our company name, you'll see a recent press release on this front. So that is some background on the company. And so some things I wish to share on what you need to transition from being a PhD student, postdoc, or a full-time faculty into being a biotech startup founder. Some things I can think of are, first, you definitely need co-founders, and you need co-founders with complementary skill sets. You need to be 100% in. No successful startup has ever been built with people working part-time all the way. And by the way, this is the only type of startup I know to build. And if you are full-time faculty and you want to be co-founder of a company, I can't speak to that. But if you are committed to your idea, your technology, and no one else is going to have that burning desire to bring it to market like you will. And so I say, quit your job, go all in. That's my advice. But you also need to have really strong conviction in your vision. So after you start the company and you get some initial seed funding, let's say through SBIR grant or whatever else, you are the person as the founder who is living and breathing your idea, your business model, your market strategy, and you will get well-meaning but poorly thought out surface level advice from lots of people around you that mean well, but haven't thought about your challenges and risks as much as you have. And it might seem on the surface like they know better than you because they've done something in some tangential industry before, or maybe they haven't. But it is a useful skill for you to develop is to take in all the advice, but then in the end consider it. But then in the end, just do what you think is right anyway. And that has served me well. And this is an N of 1, but that is something I would like to communicate. And the other thing I think Suzanne asked me to talk about the other day was about highs and lows of being a startup founder. And the question of, should you start a company? The highs are several, and they come tied with certain things, right? Like, so you're going to start with a technology that is preliminary, that is nascent, and every time you de-risk it and you hit a milestone, that's going to feel pretty damn good, right? And those highs are like when we got our clinical study data and we saw great accuracy, that felt really good. And it's also going to, another high is when you receive funding, be it grant funding, be it VC funding. External validation does matter to an extent because it means that someone else thinks your idea is worth something and not just yourself. But then again, like you shouldn't attach too much importance to funding because the funding, the raising money is not an accomplishment in itself. It's just like the beginning of actually executing on your plan. The other thing that I find incredibly rewarding, which is also true of being an academic, I see a lot of parallels there, right? Is that you are creating value. Well, in an academic setting, you're creating value on the research side, but here with a startup, you're creating economic value literally out of nothing. You're creating something from nothing, and that is something that's extremely rewarding and meaningful. And of course, I imagine everyone on this call, if they were to start a company, would start a company that meets some unmet medical need. So that impact on patient care is also something that's rewarding. Now, on the lows side, I can tie it to these exact same 4 things, right? So the technical de-risking, it almost never goes to plan, and you're going to have to persist through a lot of setbacks on that front. Things always go wrong. Funding is incredibly hard to get. It can get quite depressing if to hear like 50 no's continuously, right? I must have pitched 80 different investors last year for our Series A, and it's definitely a worse hit rate, especially in the pre-revenue stage compared to grant funding. And you'll deal with people who hold the power to fund you, who are, completely ignorant of your science, and you'll have to, sort of persist through that and still try to present your idea. And the other low that can sometimes get a little depressing is that it's unfortunate, but luck plays a big role in the success of any venture. And if anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. And so you need to recognize that. And the aphorism of like, the chance favors the prepared mind is to a certain extent true, but sometimes a competitor does better than you. It could just be pure dumb luck. And that's just how it is. And you have to be prepared to meet that. So that, I think that ends my about 10 minutes, right? So I will close there, and I'm happy to answer questions later. And, I know overall my message is that it's a slog. It's hard, but it's also very rewarding if you care about what you're doing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. And I know that whatever happens to my current company, I'm going to start another one for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala. Right on time. Very, 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 very good. I appreciate it. And our final speaker of the first session, this will be Donna Chang, CEO, President of Hope Biosciences. So Donna, welcome.
Donna, you're muted.
Oh, okay.
Now we can hear you. There you go.
All right, great. All right, I'm going to start off with a few disclosures. First of all, I have no background in academia, so all of my experience has been within state government as well as industry. Two, Hope Biosciences is the only company that I've started, and since we are in the very early chapters, I actually don't know what the end is yet. So all I can present to you is sort of the experience as it is live. I'm giving you a live perspective on how it is. And number three, I do realize that people start businesses for a variety of different reasons. And I think my talk would be most relevant to those dreamers out there who are really looking to build something from the ground up and wanting to see it grow to the very end. And for me, growing Hope Bio is so that my kids and grandkids can one day benefit from this technology that we're working on. And that is a driving force. And so I am in it for the long haul. So what was my goal? Originally, and still is, my goal was to create a revolutionary biotech company that would deliver safe, effective, and affordable adult stem cell therapies for incurable conditions. And for anyone in the biotech industry that's interested in creating a therapeutic, this is your 12-year roadmap, okay? And in early 2015, I had this idea of starting a company, and I had a lot of energy, very optimistic. I knew an investor that was an engineer. He was in technology, so he was very comfortable with this space, and he knew me well. So I knew that he knew that I was a person who worked hard and this would be no problem. Well, I pitched him. It's the only pitch I've ever done for Hope Bio, and it went well in the sense that he wanted to invest. The only problem was that it was a terrible deal, like awful, right? And so when you are starting a company and you're starting from this very beginning, right? You're raising seed capital to get into your proof of concept. At that time, the risk is the highest. So no matter who you go to, it doesn't matter if I know this person for a long time, the deal is going to be what it is. So I decided that I needed to take a different approach and sort of rethink my strategy. And anytime you're starting a company, you have to ask the classic question, like, what problem are you really trying to solve? And I think in my little bubble, I kept thinking about, well, I'm going to, change the way rheumatoid arthritis is treated, or I'm going to develop a way that Alzheimer's is going to be taken care of. But when I took a step back and kind of looked at the bigger picture, I wondered, like, why is there not a single cell therapy approved in the United States yet? Okay, there's obviously something that's not happening or working. So I realized that a lot of, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here, a lot of companies end up failing here, at least in the cell therapy world at the phase 3. So this is a stage where all the money, all the hundreds of millions of dollars have been raised, and now investments have been made to, you have 1,000 patient trials and multi-center, and everything's supposed to go peachy keen, but you'll realize that, fixing a couple animals and a handful of humans is pretty easy. Scaling cell therapy is a totally different game, okay? And efficacy is tightly associated with your quality of manufacturing. So if you can't solve those problems on the back end, then there's really no sense of doing all this hard work on the front end and giving up all your percentage of your company plus your heart and soul, right? So I decided if we're going to start and we're going to do anything, we've got to start here, rather than from the typical beginning. So this is what happened. In order to ensure long-term success, my partner and I, we decided we're going to fix the classical manufacturing problems. And that's a whole technical discussion, which I'm not going to get into because we don't have time, but I gave him a year. And first, let me just say, when you're trying to find the right kind of partner to work with, you really have to just make sure that you guys are on completely the same wavelength. Like the mission that you are both embarking on is always the same and it will not waver. It's extremely important because every decision that your company makes is going to be dependent on that. So a firm foundation is very important. So I said, we have a year. We have a year to figure this out because I said, I'm going to give up my entire life savings and I know I can feed us for a year. So that's it. We got a year to figure this out. And if we can't, then we'll just move on to the rest of our lives. So that's what we did. We started, and within just under a year, my partner invented a new cell culture method, and it would solve a lot of the industry's current problems with cell therapy production. And we filed our first patent within that time. So I went back to the same investor, the one that I got the terrible deal from before. And he was actually really surprised that I was still in the city. Like he thought I had moved on already. And I just wanted to show him, like, look at what we were able to accomplish. And what I love about investors is that they have a capability of seeing a much bigger picture than you are. Us, like we're so ingrained in what we're doing, it's hard for us to see even the value of what we're actually making. By the time I was able to explain all of what we had accomplished, he valued the progress much higher than I would have ever imagined. And so he ended up making an offer that I really couldn't refuse. And I didn't even pitch anything. I was just, talking to him about what we had done. So here we are, we got some funding, and then now we had to go back to the beginning and now do all the work that you would have to do, the proof of concept and preclinical studies and whatnot. So within the first year, we got into our first human study. And if you look at 2018, it took an entire year for us to file our very first IND for rheumatoid arthritis. And this leads to tip number 5, which is DIY, like learn to do things on your own. I think that's so important because if you can become self-sufficient, it will save you a tremendous amount of money and time. So like, I know we can all relate. We all want like luxury car service, but if you can learn to do your own oil change, then you're going to save a lot of time, and you can do it at 3 a.m, right? You bypass everybody, right? And so if you look at what happened in 2019, we ended up filing 6 INDs and getting them all through FDA and into clinic. And they're for all different diseases. So the productivity increases so much more because you have the in-house power to be able to do it. So if you look at 2020, COVID-19, like we're literally seeing it come to our shores. We applied to FDA within 30 days, we had our first clearance to go into clinic. So I think just based on being able to learn and do it ourselves, it's been a big advantage.
2 minutes, please.
So lastly, yeah, it's tip number 6, just your speed is your biggest advantage. Us cockroaches, like we're super fast, and you have to leverage that. Like you have to be fast and be wary of OPM. OPM is other people's money, whether it be grant money, government money, or whatever it is. When you take it, there's always something that might make it take more time, right? So always be wary of that. And that's the best advice I can give. This is my team. Without them, none of this would be possible. So I hope I provided some helpful information. So thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Donna, thank you very much for sharing it with us. And we are, because everyone's presentations were spot on perfect, as we expected. We're spot on right on time. So we actually have 15 minutes to entertain questions, and either open your mic and turn on your camera if you want. And if you have a specific question for someone, address it to them. If it's a general question, fire away. Does that sound about right, Suzanne, or she may correct me?
Yes, we're doing all questions through the chat. Specific questions can be voiced in the breakout sessions.
As per usual, I got it wrong.
And Stan, while those are coming in, you can address some of the ones that were submitted in advance if you'd like.
I would be delighted to. All right, so to our four speakers, one of the participants had a question. Do any of you feel a course degree, such as an MBA, is helpful to manage the shift from academic to entrepreneurship? And I think a related question is, what do you think it takes to undergo the transition from being in quote unquote academics, whatever that is, to running a company? So kind of a two-part question. So I turn it over to the four of you as leaders of your company.
Can I take the first part? This is Bala.
Yep.
I have a pretty strong opinion here that you absolutely don't need an MBA. Please don't waste your money or your time. If you already have an idea and you already have a technology you want to take to market, just start the company. MBAs are great for if you are joining a fast-growing company and you want to scale it. An MBA is not going to teach you how to go from 0 to 1. So yeah, no MBA.
I second that. I've only taken one entrepreneurship class, life science entrepreneurship. I do think that auditing or going to one class could be really helpful. But there are a lot of books like Venture Deals that if you just read that book, you will know what you need to know. I have no serious education in business, and I'm asked to lecture at business programs all the time.
Any particular skills that you would encourage people to try to develop? So all of you are fairly outgoing, and the ones of you that I know, fairly kind of self-reflective of your strengths and weaknesses. Any other skills you would encourage the participants to think of, shall we say, nurturing within themselves?
I think presentation skills, pitching is a really important part. So public speaking, I mean, you as a scientist have to do journal club or, your annual conference, and taking that really seriously. Beefing up, how do you communicate science to non-scientists?
Okay. I'm going to pick up a few questions out of the chat room now, okay? And I apologize in advance if I overlook someone's question. I'll do my best to do it in order. From Yunal, he says, I am not an academician, and if I have an idea that was not financially supported by my university and I developed on my own time, do I still need to check in with the university whether they have a share in the IP? That I think is going to be, I'm just going to jump right in, an IP issue with your university, check with your tech transfer office, because that's going to be university by university specific. So I'm going to jump ahead.
Yeah. And getting a document from them, even if you know they're not going to own it, having a signed document saying they don't own it, your investors would like that.
Question from Kevin to the group. Seeing SBIR is important as a start. Do you think working with an outside company or forming a shell company to have better control? Let me see if I can rephrase that. The idea SBIR is important. Do you think working with an outside company to help develop an SBIR grant is a good idea? Or he says, developing a shell company. I'm going to assume he means developing your own company to submit an SBIR grant. Any thoughts on that?
Please write your own. I think your first one, you should just write. You're all academics. You write grants all the time. An SBIR is just a grant. And it's reviewed by academics mostly. And just I think you should put in the time. I have, you know, the consultants, grant writing consultants are good on the procedural side of things. They can certainly help you navigate what registrations you need and how exactly you submit or how you audit your accounting and so forth. But no one knows your technology better than you. And while you can have people, you know, revise your work and edit it, you should certainly be putting in. I would recommend budgeting. Like, it took me a couple hundred hours to write my first SBIR, and you should just put in that effort. I think even if you have external help, you should be doing meat of the work.
And if you need a legal entity to apply, you can just make one on LegalZoom. I do it all the time. And if you need help with that, I can tell you how.
And speakers will put their emails out there if you have some questions. But regarding, you know, your networks, so a question to Brittany, but it also applies to everyone. You know, so Brittany, one of our participants, said you had mentioned the joys and advantages and fun of having coffee with a lot of people and networking. And so how do you keep up your networks? Do you find they go stale? Do you find people need to be poked every now and then? Any suggestions on what to do to keep your extensive networks?
Yeah, for sure. So the people that actually took the time to have a call with me or coffee, they probably introduced me to somebody else, or they recommended I read a book. And so I would follow up with them and say, hey, thanks for putting me in touch with Becca. She was amazing. I really appreciate that. Like, letting them know, like, hey, what you did was really great, and I appreciate that book recommendation or whatever. At this point, my network is so big. The way I stay in touch is by having a very active LinkedIn profile. So I'm always posting every day, like, whoa, interesting article, or hey, what do y'all think about this? Or cool, I went to, you know, I already took a screenshot of this and I'm going to post it later on LinkedIn. Wow, that was a great conference. And I'll tag a bunch of people in it. And it allows my network to see, like, oh, that's what Brittany's up to. Cool. So that's what I recommend.
Donna, Shautong, Bala, any suggestions, you know, to help people get their, you know, keep their networks alive and vibrant?
You know, as someone, you know, in a startup like this, there's just aren't enough hours in the day. And yeah, it's something that I, as an entrepreneur, really have to work on. I know that a network is everything. And yeah, I've just done a really poor job being able to upkeep a good network. But you know, in Houston, we live in such a tight biotech cluster because it's so small. Coming from Maryland, where we had a very large biotech cluster, it's a very different sort of atmosphere. It's almost like a family atmosphere. Everyone knows each other. So that's sort of you know, you can't really hide around here, and everyone will know what you're doing. So that's a good thing. There's a lot of support, and the good thing is everyone's sort of, you know, keeping tabs on each other. So.
Okay. Another question for everyone. So if you had to name what is kind of one of the most unexpected, so again, you're all young, which is great. One of the most unexpected events that occurred as you started your company and began to develop it. Is there one thing that you were like, what the heck is this all about? You know, came out of nowhere. Any thoughts on, each of you can weigh in on that life-changing moment?
I'll take a stab at that. I think for me, I was hyper-focused on the product and hyper-focused on, you know, my company's mission, creating a good product. So when I got there, and by the time it was time to go to clinic, that's a whole nother ballgame. Clinical trials is something that and every vendor will tell you, you know absolutely nothing about what you're doing. You know, they will convince you that you are going to crash and burn without them, right? So it has been a real learning experience, and something, GCP compliance is something it's a whole new world. But again, it's something that we've taken on to try and learn. And the more we learn as outsiders, the more we question why things are done a certain way. And so there are actually little innovations being made in the clinical space, especially with the advent of technology, virtual technology, being able to meet patients anywhere, being able to deliver cell therapies at home. We are the only cell therapy that I know of that is being administered in a home setting as well in some cases. So the kind of pushing that we're doing from a regulatory front and from a clinical perspective, it's just, again, if you just open your eyes to things, I think you'll find you'll be surprised in every corner, right? And plenty of things to work on and innovate. Yeah.
Bala, anything take you by surprise?
Yeah, I do have something to add here, and it's not something that. Okay, so we're all, when we start off and we have a PhD and we have a technology, it's very tech focused, right? We think in terms of de-risking, but the one thing that you should be aware of is that beyond a certain stage, at your seed stage, it's going to be mostly on, well, how are you going to de-risk the technology? Beyond a certain stage, you've raised $2 million. Nobody's going to care about your technology. They're not going to care. They're going to assume you've got it, and mostly focus on how you're going to make money. So you need to start thinking about that from the very beginning. And this might be specific to my experience. We're trying to do a direct-to-consumer diagnostics product, which is very different from a therapeutics company where the getting to your phase 2 means a $400 million acquisition, right? So it's different. But if anyone is in my boat of not doing a 20-year or 12-year therapeutics development thing like Donna was talking about, then it matters a lot to think about your go-to-market and business model from very early on and have a defensible plan.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And final question, I'm just going to throw it out there. So where do you go for inspiration when, you've been through those, 50 pitches and everyone said no, where you look at your regulatory strategy and you're like, what the heck is going on? Or where Apple pulls the rug out from underneath you and says, sorry, this is not going to, your company's going under because we're not going to allow this technology to move forward. So where do you go to recharge and pivot? Any particular spots?
First of all, get a good therapist. Everybody in entrepreneurship should have a therapist. I put that in my company's calendar. Tuesdays, 4:30, Brittany has therapy. First of all. And then, with the company closing, it was hard to think about what is a pivot, right? But what I did was I really took that opportunity as a stepping stone to my next career move. I would never be a venture capitalist right outside of studying genetics. I got hired because of my experience being a founder. And so even if it doesn't work out, it's not a waste. You have learned so much and so many doors have been opened to you. Also, if you're not working on something that every day you jump out of bed and say, this is so important, I'm willing to stay up all night and work on it because it's that important, either because of a social cause or you're just obsessed with the idea. If it's something that you feel kind of like meh about, like you probably shouldn't do a startup around it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to then invite this first session speakers to take a look at the chat room. If there's some questions you want to help out some of the participants with, feel free to respond there. If you don't mind, but it's up to you if you want to post your email where people can reach out to you, or your LinkedIn, or however you wish to be contacted, please do so through the chat. We're now going to begin kind of part 2. So everyone, stretch the shoulders, stretch the legs, but we're going to now go into kind of a little different focus where we're going to start talking about some resources that have existed in the Texas Medical Center for a while, and some new resources that are being developed for the Texas Medical Center and Texas as a whole to, I won't say make the process easier, but at least to provide some guidance. And so I'm going to turn it over to Atul with Fanon Innovation. Atul, welcome. Delighted to see you. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Suzanne, for inviting me to participate in this. Enjoyed that first part of the discussion very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. I won't spend a lot of time on my background. Oh, let me see if I can. So just kind of, I'm going to really cover 4 topics today. One is, 20 seconds on my background. A second, I'll spend a little bit more time on why Fanon, really, why was there a need for what we created as Fanon now over a decade ago. Then spend a few minutes talking about Fanon, an overview of what we do at Fanon and who we are. And then finally, what we actually do on a day-to-day basis with technologies. In terms of my background, it's kind of the best way to summarize my background is confused. I've done a lot of things over the years, but right now, over the last 15, 20 years, I've really been, if you will, a medical scientist / entrepreneur focused on drug and device development. And a lot of the flavor, and I think I came to that through multiple steps, including medical school, a PhD, working at a biotech company where we took our drug through phase 3 and then sold it to a German biotech company, then running US operations for a multinational, being a consultant at McKinsey for a number of years, and now at Fanon for the last almost 8 years now. So why Fanon? Why is there a need for something like Fanon? Whenever I talk, I always lead off with this slide. I don't think I need to tell anybody in this group what that is. But the interesting thing is even people within Houston don't fully appreciate just the amazing scale of our academic institutions. You compare it to patient visits. I won't spend a lot of time here. There are plenty of people in this room who can do a much better job than I could in just explaining what the scale of our opportunity is in terms of drug and device development. However, right, and really this is an article that was published a couple of years ago that really pointed out something that should not come as a surprise to most of you. That if you really think about drugs, and a lot of the focus of this conversation is on drugs, obviously medical devices play a slightly, context for that is a little bit different. But if you look at drugs, virtually every drug that's been approved, and this goes back through 2010, but it's really true even earlier than that, is that drugs really come out through, are highly enabled through academic research, right? NIH funded research primarily. But despite us having the amazing medical center and all of the research and clinical care, we leave, shall we say, something to be desired if you look at where we stand from a product development perspective. These numbers are a little bit older. I don't know that they've changed enormously, but we have had a number of new things come up over the last few years. So, hopefully in the not distant future, some of these numbers will increase, but it really, we are way behind where we should be based on our academic institutions and the research, if you look at where we are on the commercialization side. And this is actually not unique to Houston, right? So it's actually very interesting. If you look at the pharma commercialization in the US, about 85% of that early stage commercialization takes place in Boston and San Francisco. But if you look at the NIH funded research going to those 2 locations, it's actually less than 15%. So you have a huge geographic mismatch between 2 places that have amazing academic institutions and also amazing biotech ecosystems versus all of these other places, including places like Houston, that have the academic ecosystem but don't really have the commercialization. And the question is why? And this is actually a very interesting article that came out earlier this year that said that in response to a lot of these kind of data that's been coming out for the last couple of decades, there's been a big push in the last 20 years of universities trying to push increasing number of startups. But unfortunately, those have not really translated into successful commercialization for the most part. There are amazing exceptions, of course, but by and large, these authors talked about the rise of the walking dead as the zombie companies. So one big question is why the disconnect? And we have a perhaps simplistic perspective, which is that, really for successful life sciences commercialization, you need three things. You need amazing research, and we have no shortage of that in Houston. But you also need strong experience management and smart capital. And I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by both of those. And those are the areas that Fanon is really focused on. So I'll spend the next few minutes talking about Fanon, but I'll start off by saying that Fanon is very different from all of the other people that you're going to hear talking about, because most of the other conversations that are happening today are really in the context of a startup, right? Whether it's the folks that you heard earlier today who talked about their own startups, or the folks that are going to be hearing after me who are going to talk about some of the resources available to help innovators and entrepreneurs succeed. So, we have a, kind of a slightly simplistic paradigm. It's like, if you have a child and you want to send that child to school, you have three options, right? One option is you homeschool, right? So if you're homeschooling your child, you're all out, right? You're in charge of every aspect of that child's schooling. And that's really what being an entrepreneur is all about, right? You're homeschooling your baby. The other extreme is, you really want nothing to do with your program or your kids. You want to engage with them every now and then. Holidays are a great time for that. So you send them off to boarding school, right? So somebody else is worrying about everything about that child, and you get to interact every now and then. And that's typically, that's more like when you out-license the technology and you can be a scientific advisor. Fanon we see ourselves in that continuum as being closer to being like a private school, right? So we do the heavy lifting of the babies that we bring in, but obviously we very much expect and would like the parents to be actively engaged. And there in this scenario, the parents are the academic researchers or the inventors. So the fundamental difference between Fanon and everybody else that you've heard talk about is that at Fanon, we are the entrepreneurs. And I'll talk a little bit about what that actually means, as against the others where you've either heard from people who are the entrepreneurs, or you're going to hear from people who are going to help you succeed as an entrepreneur. So it's kind of almost like a fork in the road. Do you want to be the entrepreneur, or do you want to be kind of the parent of a private school kid? And if it's the latter, happy to chat. If it's a farmer, we wish you all the best because we want more successes in Houston, right? So what is Fanon, right? We really are, the simplest way of thinking about it is that we are an entity with a dual mission. And our missions are, one is to build successful life sciences startups, and the other is to grow local life sciences entrepreneurs. And the reason those are both equally important missions to us is, as you saw in that earlier slide, the biggest limitation we believe in Houston is we don't have experienced life sciences entrepreneurs. And so part of our mission, and it actually ties into our first mission, is to grow that next generation of, if you will, life sciences CEOs. So this gives you, we have kind of over a dozen different active programs right now, 3 in the clinic, others, probably a couple of others that are a year away from clinic, a couple of products that we think will have something marketed. I won't go through that, but I'll kind of hit some of those later on. So if you think about the studio, and we call it a studio because we're not an entrepreneur, we're not an accelerator, we're not an incubator, we are a studio, right? So it's really, there are 4 elements, and I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this slide, right? So from our perspective, there are 4 elements to what we do. The first element is the academic researchers. So these are the kind of the parents of our babies, if you will, in some cases, right? So if you think about academic researchers in a life sciences startup environment, they play multiple roles. You could be an inventor, you could be an academic collaborator, you could be a clinical collaborator, you could be an advisor, right? So we work closely with the academic collaborators on all those fronts. But the key is they're not part of the management team. They're not the teachers, we are. So the second piece is really our experienced pool management team. And what that allows us to do is kind of address that CEO bottleneck in the ecosystem. And because we have a large group, and you'll see that in a minute, we have people with different levels of experience, which is far more than would be possible with any single individual early stage companies. We have our internship and fellowship programs. I'll talk about that in a minute. And that really serves to both amplify the core team as well as to train that next generation of entrepreneurs. And finally, there's a smart funding. And when I say smart, I actually would argue that it's risk optimized and I know stage optimized. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about that in a minute. Here are some of our academic collaborators. You probably recognize many of them. This is our core team. We have about a 20 people core team, and these are folks who run the studio assets. So when you think about Fanon programs, they fall in 2 categories. There are what I would call the studio programs, those are the things that we run full time. So those are the programs that are typically early stage, that this team that you see on the left is really managing every aspect of from day one. And then as the programs advance, at some point we'll start either having people spending dedicated time on an individual program and or bring in outside funding. And so Procerion and Pulmotech are two examples of companies that are at that stage. Procerion now has, and they're both in phase 2, Procerion has about 30 employees of their own, and the role that Fanon plays is kind of more like a board role. Pulmotech is also in phase 2. There it's kind of a little bit more of a hybrid role. For example, I serve as the chief medical officer at Pulmotech, but really Colin and Eric, who are extremely experienced CEOs, run those programs. Our internship and fellowship programs, anybody's interested, happy to chat, but that's actually one of the largest programs of its kind anywhere in the world. We bring in interns. We've had over 225 interns in the last 7-8 years. We have 5 2-year full-time fellows a year. We recently got accreditation as an apprenticeship program by the Department of Labor, something I'm very proud of, because I think a very large proportion of the young life sciences entrepreneurs in Houston today have been our alums in one form or the other. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about the money, right? So as you think about money, money is obviously really important to any early stage biotech company. And we think and I think a couple of the speakers before me talked about the importance of grant funding, and I'll kind of re-emphasize that. And I think the reason why we think at an early stage grant funding is really important is because typically at the stage when a technology comes out of an academic institution, you have a 99% plus failure rate. And so it really is not something that we believe is investable. I mean, you have excessive investment money floating around in Boston and San Francisco, so you could probably get early stage funding. But in places like Houston, you have to be a little bit more thoughtful. So we leverage grant funding. SBR, STTR is an example. There's other sources of funding to kind of do that early stage de-risking, if you will. And to us, it's really important for several reasons. First of all, it's free money. But secondly, it actually forces you to think about what your development program looks like, right? So I think Bala talked about writing that first grant yourself. That's absolutely true, because it's by writing grants that you figure out what you actually want to do. It figures out who your collaborators are. You talk to people to get letters of support from industry. So there's a lot of pieces that go into writing a grant that actually helps you advance your program, even if you get no funding. And then the review process gives you powerful feedback. I mean, often you are hit by people who give you feedback that you think is completely inane, but the reality is, by and large, you get useful feedback. So to us, that's really the program, is that early stage, Fanon stage programs, we bring in grant funded money. And then as the programs advance, we can bring in investor dollars. And we've now had almost $150 million invested across our programs. Just comment
about a minute and a half.
So the question really is, what do we do on a day-to-day basis? Very simple, right? When we bring technologies in, there's 4 things that we have to do, right? We have to validate the science, and that includes replicating key experiments. All of you know that, replicating key experiments is really critical for a pharma person. You have to define the development indications, and that includes both the initial indications, which actually may not be your final indication, but that includes things like figuring out, what is the market, what is the development part, what is the regulatory path, all of those. And then there are probably a larger indication. So that's actually a pretty important piece of what we do. There's a whole designing and execution of the program, and then we'll seek stage appropriate funding. And throughout that process, we're continuously engaging externally, right? Whether it's with pharma partners, whether it's with experts, and you're iterating on all of this. And our academic collaborators are a critical part of this. They provide kind of a lot of the intellectual leadership, but we focus on the pieces that have to be de-risked from, if you wish to talk to some of the folks that we work with, always happy to engage that. Happy to make those introductions. And then really, this is kind of a summary slide. I won't go through that. I suspect I'm almost out of time here. But effectively, we are a for-profit company. We in-license technologies, and we also build our own. And fundamentally, we're different in that we're a pooled management team that leverages capital. The key thing is we are not a funding source for academic research, and we're not kind of a home for standalone entrepreneurs. And that's my contact information. Always happy to chat if anybody has any questions, whether you want to learn about Fanon or if you're trying to move forward in your own programs. We really want the entire ecosystem to succeed, and so that's part of our goals. Thank you.
Cool. Very good. And thank you very, very much. And we definitely appreciate all you've been doing in the Houston ecosystem and will continue to do in the Houston ecosystem. I'm going to now turn it over to Magnus, who will give us a preview of a course that his team is launching this fall and may be of great interest to a lot of people on this call. So Magnus, welcome. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you. And I'm going to take the liberty of starting off by saying that I represent perhaps a new type of biotech entrepreneur that hasn't really had a voice here earlier. I am, it's actually almost exactly 50 years since I went to grad school. I've been in Houston for 30 years and been involved in different biotech companies also for over 30 years. And I remain an academician. So I think it is a viable path, career path for some to stay in academia. I think as an academician, you do need to partner with others out there, such as Fannin, and the Pulmotech story is a project that I've been involved with. Now, to the real focus of my presentation is the graduate track in biotechnology that we at Texas A&M is putting together. And the next slide shows you the people that are we. That's me. I'm a professor at A&M. Srishtee, who is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, is currently a postdoc in my lab. And Margie, who is really an expert teacher, particularly when it comes to offering online courses, is helping with this aspect. The mission of the IBT Biotech Alliance is to create a support system for innovators at Texas A&M University and at the TMC. What we have focused on in the early stage of this program is the educational part. We have come furthest with this graduate level course and the biotechnology graduate track. We put together a core curriculum which involves the foundation of biotechnology, foundation of drug development, the how to start a company, or rather an introduction to how to start a company. And then what we are looking to add to this is an internship. So altogether, this is about 8 to 10 credit hours. The goal of this graduate track is not to educate technicians for the biotech industry, but our goal is to train scientists, the next generation scientists. So when you graduate from our program, that would be a mature, independent, confident scientist, hopefully. And I come back and talk a little bit more about the how to start a company course. That is in a second. I would like to mention that this graduate course is complemented with a summer research program in biotechnology for undergraduates that is sponsored by the Hamill Foundation. We are also working on a postdoctoral certificate program that will take advantage of the courses offered in the graduate program, and people from the, some of us from the Biotech Alliance at IBT are also serving as advisors to a training program within the Houston Community College where they are attempting to put together a couple of more technical programs. So now to the how to start a company, or introduction of how to start a company. This is not attempted to be an MBA. We're certainly not qualified to do that. The course will be taught by jointly with other institutions in the TMC, so we will run it through the GCC. It will involve 10 weeks this fall, be a virtual course where we will have a 3-hour session each week focusing on a particular topic, where first an expert will provide the content, and then we will have breakout sessions with teams, and a moderator or facilitator will be assigned to each team. So because of the team learning here being such a central part, we will have to limit the number of attendance, and we will initially give preference to graduate students, but could also talk about postdocs and other interested parties participating or auditing this. So below here follows list of what we think are learning outcomes. Actually going to skip through this and ask that in our breakout session, we will go through and discuss this more, and instead move to the next slide, where we will talk about what the overall goal is of this. So we want to provide a comprehensive source of information along with hands-on learning. So basically, I would say that if you're as a graduate student or a postdoc, or as a junior faculty member, are interested to get involved in starting a company, this may be a course that would not take too much time, but give you a sense of what is really involved. I know from my own experience, where I got interested in figuring out of all the exciting things that were happening in the lab really had a practical application. That's my reason for getting into biotechnology, and there were a lot of mistakes made. I was lucky, so I had people around me who could steer the technology into the right track, and where I, as a scientist, was very much involved, particularly in the early stages of these companies' life, and as they have matured more and more, experts will take over. So if you are interested in thinking about these types of questions, I would recommend that you think about potentially joining in. And with that, I will stop and ask you, if you're interested to learn more, that you join us in the breakout room.
Magnus, thank you very much. And I know you've had a number of very successful companies that develop from the work you've done and that you've been involved in. So this will be a good training and education for young and not so young researchers, academicians interested in trying to follow in your, shall we say, very impressive footsteps. So it should be a lot of fun. And now we'll move on to discussion of a new resource, another new resource that is being developed in the medical center. And I'm going to just do a quick overview or to begin this, and then turn it over to Tom to flesh out kind of what we're doing. And just to put it in the context, this accelerator for cancer therapeutics is a CPRIT funded core resource. It joins a number of needed core resources that we have throughout the medical center. And it kind of fits into this scheme of kind of a shared resources that are designed so that regardless of what institution you are at, you have access to all of these resources, hopefully fairly seamlessly. That's the overall goal. The goal of these core resources from CPRIT are to really knock down some barriers between institutions and make sure everyone works together to advance kind of the research that's coming out of the Texas Medical Center and throughout Texas. So this new accelerator, you know, really is kind of another case in point of how, you know, one can apply just the usual entrepreneurship thinking that we all do in really working together across institutions, across the city, across the state. So CPRIT, July, so about 3 years ago, GCC, Gulf Coast Consortium, hosted CPRIT Roundtable in the BRC building. After that meeting, a number of us from throughout the GCC, my own campus, University of Houston, kind of got together and said, well, why don't we think about a new accelerator that is focused on the business aspects of developing cancer therapeutics. We all know the research elements. How do we put business? And so, you know, through fits and starts and collaborative efforts, the program developed very quickly. We reached out to TMCX, and within a month was able to integrate their team into the proposal. It was submitted, and as Bala said earlier, you know, we faced rejection. So it didn't get funded the first time around, but what the heck, we kept at it. Resubmitted a year and a half ago back to CPRIT. It was funded a little less than a year ago, and now Tom is leading this effort through the TMCX as part of a new accelerator program in that organization. So again, this effort only comes about by everyone kind of pulling together, realizing there's a problem to be solved, finding a way to solve it, and really breaking down barriers. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Tom to kind of lay out what this program is, because it's getting ready to take on participants. So Tom directs the TMCX over on Holcomb Avenue. So I'll turn this over to Tom.
Thank you, Stan. Just a Zoom check, you all can hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Very, very good. So hi, everybody. I'm Tom Luby. I'm the director at TMC Innovation. Just for a quick background, I actually grew up in the Northeast, went to school, undergraduate at State University, New York, and then did my PhD in immunology at Tufts University in Boston. like all good graduate students do, after I defended, I went to do a postdoc at Harvard School of Public Health in cancer cell genetics. Lasted about 5 days and realized that I was not one to pursue, you know, what I felt like was graduate school redo as a postdoc, and networked my way into a startup biotech company, and then wound up doing 3 different startups, biotech startups in Boston. One that we got the lead product into phase 2 clinical trials, and it failed, and the company quickly went away after that. One that we bootstrapped nights and weekends while we were doing our day jobs, and got it started, but never got it institutionally funded. And I still own equity in that company, but it's not worth a lot these days. And then a third one, which went through a little bit of big fish ate the little fish. So we're a small immunotherapeutics company. We got bought by a mid-sized biotech company, and then got acquired by a large Japanese pharmaceutical company called Eisai. And in that experience, I transitioned from being a sort of a bench scientist, group leader, and into the more BD side of biotech, and used that experience to get hired by a company called Shire, which was eventually acquired by Takeda, to learn the BD ropes from the buy side of biotech, and a little bit of corporate venture capital experience there, and then used that experience to get a job at Johnson & Johnson in their Boston office, doing really at that point, supporting their pharmaceutical group just in straight BD and corporate venture capital. So had left the R&D part of my world behind. In 2017, I had a chance to come to Houston. So I didn't know a lot about Houston, being a Northeast kid, but came here, was really impressed with the Texas Medical Center and the resources and the quality of the research going there, and joined the JLabs team in 2017. And then last year, in 2019, was recruited literally over the wall to join the TMC innovation team. And it was at my time at JLabs that I first encountered Stan and Suzanne, who were working on the CPRIT grant for developing a cancer therapeutics accelerator. TMC in partnership with TMC Innovation. TMC Innovation had traditionally been running an accelerator called TMCX for a number of years, focused in med device and digital health, not focused on therapeutics. And the opportunity for CPRIT to fund it would allow for an additional set of resources to be available to folks like you that are on the phone right now to take advantage of acceleration, which I'll talk about in a second, and the broader network that Stan and Suzanne bring to this program. So as Stan gave a nice history, the program got funded at the end of last year. We had a year to build it, which included making a number of key hires, which I'll highlight in a couple of slides. And we'll launch the request for our first proposals in about a couple months. Middle of August, we'll be recruiting applications to initiate our first cohort. So Ashley, if you can give me the next slide, please. So what are we trying to do with this accelerator? Well, really, we're thinking about early stage, so projects that are still in academic institutions with PIs or postdocs that are thinking about starting a company from it, or already established early stage biotech companies. And what we hope to be able to do is increase the overall success rate, and we'll do that through providing a set of experiences or experienced people as resources to both different sort of groups, if you will. And there, if you're making better decisions early, you should be able to decrease the overall development time and make it more capital efficient. So this is an institutionally independent accelerator, right? So TMC is a not-for-profit, not affiliated with any academic institution, but we work with all of them in the Texas Medical Center. It's no strings attached, or otherwise known as no equity to participate. So you don't have to give up any piece of your company or any of your rights to your intellectual property to participate. We will keep this model pretty flexible. We have a lot of experience running a successful accelerator in TMCX, And we understand that, you know, there's no one size fits all when you do this. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And, you know, obviously you'll have the opportunity to be embedded in the Texas Medical Center and have the resources that we've pulled together available to each of the programs and or companies that are accepted into the program. So the format is this middle box here. It's a 9-month accelerator, but it's not 9 months full time. It's pretty intensive, first week and a half to 2 weeks. We call it boot camp. And that's really where we provide a lot of orientation for the individuals that are participating, what to expect and what our expectations of them will be. And we do heavy project assessment across our advisor and mentor network. And then we start to move into on-site over at the Cookie Factory, for those of you guys who know where that is. Structured programming just for 3 days a month. And really this is going to cover a bit of soup to nuts about things that have to be thought about for early stage commercialization of cancer therapeutics, not device, not digital health, but cancer therapeutics, and very specifically focused on that. And then as we draw to a close, it becomes much more dynamic. We really tailor the interactions that we have with each of the projects and companies and our advisors and hospital networks to that program specifically. And all along that, we are going to be, one of the requirements is to submit an SBIR for sure. And depending on the stage of the company, potentially STTR or secret C grant as well. So submitting a grant and having the resources and the support to help write a successful grant will be a big part of what we do. We'll do pitch presentation at the end. Brittany highlighted, you know, being an effective person or a person who's effectively pitching their projects is important, and we'll work with each of the groups and companies to make sure that that's as tight as it can be. And then a showcase event, not a big splashy demo day, but rather a really tailored, individualistic opportunity to pitch to people who might be able to make an immediate impact on the success of the project and their company. Resources, so we have a very tailored and high caliber, high value mentor and advisor network, which each of the companies and projects will be able to tap into, you know, especially during those months 2 through 5 and 6 through 9. Very highly tailored, very thoughtful engagements, lots of institutional knowledge across the different member institutions that we have, and then, you know, resources as well. So if you're accepted into this program, it's a CPRIT-backed program, so access to the CPRIT Core Network, which Stan highlighted in that slide, access to JLabs next door, and then a big part of what we're doing, especially for small molecule companies, is access to the Schrodinger software suite of computational chemistry resources, and a computational chemist, Amit, who I'll introduce in a second, that we hired to be a resource for companies as well. Next slide. So the next slide is the team. There's a few people that are on this team that are on the call. Maybe all of them are on the call. You can see Stan and Suzanne are our partners here. So we meet bi-weekly with them. We want to make sure this program is integrated into all the efforts that they've had ongoing and continue to generate in terms of the core facilities and access across this great state of Texas. Ashley Francis is the project manager. She's the glue. She keeps this all together and will help us run an efficient and highly impactful program for all the people that are accepted. Sarah and Leah are our 2 entrepreneurs in residence, both with backgrounds in startup biotech and have the ability to think about the translational piece, commercialization, and moving your projects forward. So, and Amit, the computational chemist, also with a company industry background, so able to provide not only the technical piece, thinking about, you know, engaging in the Schrodinger suite, but also thoughtfulness around drug development, especially in small molecules from an industry perspective as well. So for programs and companies that are accepted into the program, can think of these 4 people as virtual team members, right? So they are going to be working closely with you on as much needed basis as possible to provide their expertise, to provide access to the resources at no cost to the companies that are included in the accelerator. And then I think the next slide is, okay, yeah. So we have an information session coming up on Tuesday, June 30th at 3 o'clock. So we'll go into much more detail than this 10 minutes will allow us to do. So you get to understand more of the details and the application process. That's important as well. We are going to do a breakout session after this as well for 20 minutes. So there's an opportunity to ask some specific questions there that don't get covered in the next 15 minutes. Feel free to contact Ashley, myself, actually all of us. Our information is freely available, and we look forward to engaging with everybody on this call to learn more about the program, see if it might be something that would be interesting and I know incredibly impactful for the companies and projects that get into the program. So thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Tom. Very good. And definitely we're all looking forward to that. And so that gives a sense of some of the resources in the medical center and that are being developed and that have been here a while. And so we'll open it up for questions. Again, if I do this right, we'll be taking questions from the chat box on the side. So we'll give you a minute to type them in to anyone. And whilst you're doing that, let me pull a few questions that were submitted in advance. And so this is a very open question to Magnus, Atul, Tom. You all have, you've been in Houston anywhere from a few years to many years. I've been here somewhere in between those. And we always hear, yeah, you know, next year Houston's going to break out. Houston's going to, you know, become the third coast, rival San Francisco, San Diego, Boston, et cetera, et cetera. What do you see the next 5 years in the kind of biotech space in Houston? What do you think that's going to look like, and what gives you optimism and what gives you pause other than the current crises that we're facing in this country? And so all of you have the expertise to chime in on that.
This is Magnus, if I may. I think that what was really very exciting was the Biotech Life Science meeting that was held over at Rice in the fall. I used to go to those maybe 10, 15 years, and there were 3, 4 companies presenting. This was, I think Susan said there was what? Over 600 registered participants. And there are a lot of grad students, postdocs that are interested in this. And I see the interest among these individuals being the driving force in the future. And I'm very optimistic about it. So I'll keep going for another 50 years.
So I kind of amplify a little bit on what Magnus said. I've been in Houston for over 25 years. I think the question is not, you know, are we going to become Boston in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years? I just don't know that's relevant, but I do think there's been a steady growth in terms of what we have. And Magnus alluded to the number of companies in the life sciences conference, but we had, when we looked at that, we had 22 clinical stage cancer companies, right? So I actually think we don't do a good enough job of highlighting the successes that we do have. Can we have a lot more given our medical center? Absolutely. What it will take to get there, you know, will be kind of all of us working together.
Yeah, really nothing to add to that. No, not much to add. I mean, I'm an optimist. I moved to Houston and stayed because I see this as a really great place for growth, especially, you know, we've been focusing on device and digital health, but you know, therapeutics is really a great opportunity for Houston. Therapeutics is the longer haul. It's the heavier lift. But, you know, the stats that Atul showed before, just about the amount of NIH, you know, NCI funding that's coming here, you know, there's an opportunity for more efficient translation. And, you know, I'm really excited to be part of it.
Okay. Do you guys feel the current COVID-19 shall we say, situation prevents opportunities for us, presents some new opportunities that we can take advantage of, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Or are there challenges that we really need to be looking at with the COVID-19? Obviously, you know, ranging from simple things like virtual meetings. So where do you think the COVID fits in, or does it at all?
Well, you know, I take a very kind of high level, maybe almost philosophic view of COVID. Not, you know, obviously the day-to-day grind of moving through a pandemic is a challenge on many levels, but, you know, where's the hope in COVID? The hope is in developing new therapeutics and vaccines to fix the problem. And, you know, it highlights the power of the things that we're all trying to do. You know, there's really, it's a mission-driven business that we're in, and, you know, a pandemic with, you know, no other treatments right now just makes people understand, I think, even more acutely the importance of basic research and translational research in order to give us all, you know, better healthcare or you know, increase human health.
So I'll agree with what Tom said. I think, you know, in the early stages of the COVID crisis, there was a lot of money chasing kind of COVID related things. I'm now almost seeing like COVID fatigue. So I think it's really to Tom's point, it's kind of a longer stage game in terms of just, we have to keep moving what we're doing. And it definitely, I think this whole remote piece has opened up a lot more, I think made people more aware of things they can do that they could always do, but we just didn't do it. I mean, a couple of examples, right? We have Bio coming up next week. And instead of going to Bio and scheduling and trying to cram 200 meetings in 3-4 days, what we're using is we're still using the Bio platform, but scheduling offline conversations, teleconversations with people over the next month or so. So it's actually much more efficient. And then we have at Fanon, we have what we call this Learn with Leaders series. Tom's been graciously part of that. And now since we can't do that locally, we're actually opening that up and bringing a whole different group of people to kind of bear to our young folks. So I actually think we are, you know, learning how to use new tools that COVID has forced us to use. And I hope some of those will continue.
Yeah, that makes definite sense. I view it as an opportunity definitely to refocus on basic science, but also on the translation and say, why does it, you know, let's ask big picture questions. Why does it still take so long to get a vaccine successfully to market, a therapeutic successfully to market, and what could, you know, are there opportunities there? One more question, and then we're going to head out to the breakout room, and this kind of again addresses a lot of the participants. Tom, Atul, Magnus, what are when you think back of people you've seen starting companies? Atul, you've had many conversations. Tom, you've seen many young companies being formed and under your watch. And Magnus, you've had a long career of watching people and yourself start companies. Any characteristics again that you, any kind of common characteristics that you look for, that you see in founders, leaders, CEOs of companies, or is this pretty much a mixed bag, and you know, you wish everyone well? And any thoughts on there?
Well, I was waiting for somebody else to start, but I'll jump right in. So, I mean, I think there's entrepreneurial zeal that you can see in people who, you know, really have the opportunity to be successful. It's, you know, you can't be part-time and do this. And certainly was true when I was an entrepreneur, and, you know, and I'm always looking for that character trait when I'm engaged with entrepreneurs. So, you know, that's, you got to have that. You got to bring some passion, usually a lot of passion, in order to be successful. The other thing is, we talk about this all the time in the confines of, you know, X and innovation and things we do, coachability, right? You're looking for people that are coachable. You know, if you're really passionate and you don't listen to anybody, you're going to be passionately running into a dead end at some point, sooner rather than later. So, you know, a person or a group of people that can listen and reflect upon the insights from, you know, people in this group and et cetera, and understand and change is important as well. So that combination to me is kind of like table stakes to be a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. I'm perhaps one of the people who maybe a minority who don't believe that entrepreneurs are made. And, you know, I do believe anybody can be an entrepreneur if they kind of learn, but to me, it all comes down to the coachability piece, right? That Tom alluded to, because, and I think that's something which over the last 4 or 5 years has just increasingly become clear to me, whether it's, you know, entrepreneur starting something on your own, or whether it's the folks that come through Fan-In, right? I mean, I think that's the one metric that to me is most easily determinative of, you know, whether somebody's likely to succeed.
Very good. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Suzanne. I'd like to thank all the speakers. Suzanne will give us some guidance on the breakout rooms. And again, I urge everyone, stay healthy, stay safe, stay sane. This too will pass, and we'll find new challenges to take these.
Lance, did you have your hand up?
That was me clapping. Until
Okay. Okay. Nice.
Those dang emojis, I can't get them straight. I'm too old for them.
Suzanne, all yours.
Okay, thanks, Dan, and thank you to all of our speakers. We really appreciate it. So those of you that registered for a breakout room, you've been placed into the breakout room that you registered for. I will say that there were a couple of you that registered that I am not seeing your names, and it's possible that it's just not obvious. So I'm going to open the rooms, and when I do that, you'll be able to join the one that you registered for. And if you don't have that ability, I'll wait here in the text so you can ask me to join whichever one you'd like to join. There won't be a need to come back to this room after you're finished. You will just be able to get off a call. We will be sending out a survey because we do want to hear from you on other topics that you'd like to hear more about, and any lingering questions that we might be able to direct to the appropriate person. Again, the video for this, as well as the transcript chat, will be made available on the IDD website. And if you have any additional questions, you can just shoot me an email. Again, thanks to all of our speakers, all the attendees. We hope to see you at our next one. So opening those rooms now.